everybody. I tried to put the camera in a way where you guys can see now more of my living room. Hello. And I'm pretty excited about today's show. It's going to be pretty wacky. I thought about it, all the things I wanted to share with you, because I actually started writing out titles for It's Not Unusual, meaning, you know, what I was going to, yay, look at all of your names, putting, you know, what the titles would be of the individual chapters, because in my writing workshop, they said that you should write 50 titles and 50 subtitles, and they may not even match. And then you can connect them all up. And I started thinking about, you know, sort of this whole idea of why we do the things we do, what our imprint is, meaning every single one of us has behaviors that are imprinted in us, or maybe it's a computer chip. I don't like a program. I don't like to think it's hardware. I always like to think it's software, that the only real hardware is your physical body, and that your brain is, you know, software, and you're always able to reprogram it and change it and go in a different direction at any time. So last Saturday, I wasn't with you guys because I was in San Diego performing at a charity event for my friend Mary Murphy. She's used to be a judge on a show called So You Think You Can Dance. And I was never on the show because I know I can dance. And I know a few of you can dance as well. But it was a great show. I don't think it's on the air anymore. I know she's not a judge anymore. And we posted a podcast. Producer Stanton posted. It was live to tape, no edits, just like the way I said it was the way he played it. So it would be a little bit more like Talk of Our Times than a produced, edited podcast. And it was called Timing is Everything. And producer Stanton he took it down. It was just for the people that were there. You had to be present to win. And it's going to get some edits and some cleanups and some production, and then we'll repost it because it was good. I could lie to you, but what's the point? I worked very hard on it. It took me a long time to compile the thoughts and ideas that I wanted to put in it, and that was posted last Saturday as I was, hey, it's good to see you. This isn't like the 3:30 where I say hi to everybody. But I do have to acknowledge some people, and Walter White, that's what he calls himself on YouTube, is someone I have to acknowledge because he's a huge supporter of everything I do, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So as I was doing this performance, and you guys were hopefully still came to the channel, and some of you still got to see it, you know, timing is everything, and you'll get to see it again, those of you who didn't. So one of the things I was talking about with a friend last week was that when I was a little girl, there was, and this could get a little bit graphic, I don't want to say adult or graphic, but, you know, I think of when I was a little girl, you would go to the zoo, or we had the Sea Aquarium, which was the original before SeaWorld, because Flipper was filmed in Florida. This was before we knew everything we know now about those places. And they would have these machines, and they were pretty wonderful. You would put a quarter or 2 quarters, maybe even 3. I mean, I don't know how expensive they got over time. But when I was a kid, they were, I think, 3 quarters, 75 cents. And the machine would, you know, close. You would pick that you wanted, you know, if you did it at the zoo, you could get a camel, or if you did it at Sea Aquarium, you could get a dolphin. And you would put in your 3 quarters, and then it would squeeze. And it was a mold, an injection mold, and it would squeeze this waxy plastic, and it would come together, and you'd watch the colored plastic go through the tubes. It was very exciting, and it would take a few minutes. You'd watch this whole process, and you'd be like dying with anticipation. You'd be, oh, here comes my dolphin, and then it would open, and your dolphin would fall down a chute, and when you took it out, it was warm still. It was warm, and you had to be careful because there was always that temptation to squeeze. Your thumb would go through it. My brother was a little bit destructive as a child. He liked to see how things worked, so he took things apart. He broke things. Things didn't get put back together. It was like the story of his life. So his little wax figures always got damaged. my little wax figures were pristine, of course. I'm telling you this because I started thinking about why we are who we are as individuals. Me, you, Walter White, Stanton, producer Stanton. And I started thinking about the notion, and I'm not saying that this is something that it's one of my theories, but it is something to think about. That in fact, every single one of us is an answer to a cosmic prayer. That your community, whatever your community is, your mom, your dad, your pastor, your rabbi, some kindergarten teacher that's just finishing college, your neighbors, there's a collective unconscious that says we need this person, and you come into the world and you're formed by these pressures. You're molten, you're soft wax, and you're formed by everything around you that presses onto you as soon as you're born, as soon as you come through that cosmic opening. Like if you really, and this is where it gets a little graphic, if you could think of your mother, and particularly your mother's vagine, as an opening from another dimension, from another place, from a spiritual realm, an invisible realm, whatever you want to think that first you weren't and then you were. If you could think of it kind of objectively as just an opening into this world, and then once you got here, everything kind of started pressing and molding you. Because think about how you take in what you take in. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I pulled these stories for today, and we'll talk about them as the show progresses. But one of the things that hang on a second, I have to focus or I won't remember my passcode because I put too many letters and numbers because who's going to break into my iPad at Starbucks? Okay, this is for real. Stop it. Okay. Yes. So if you could think of your being born as somebody waiting for you, as something waiting for you, fate, destiny, neighbors, nothing is random. And the way you think and the things that attract you and draw you in, good and bad. So some people say, oh, I have this problem because I come from a family of addictive compulsives, or and in fact, I've thought about a lot in the 2 weeks since we've been together and since I filmed Timing is Everything, which I actually did on my actual birthday, so it would have that special energy. I love marrying words, how people, Brangelina, and, how we mash things together. And one of the lines in my one-woman show is that I say that the first and only gang I ever joined with my family. And I started using the word famga to be your family gang. We have the 330 gang, and we get together, and there's camaraderie. Because at the end of the day, isn't that why people join a gang? Whether it's the Crips, the Bloods, the mob, whatever it is, it's a group. It's a collective. It's a safety in numbers. Every group technically could be called a gang. The chain gang. Remember Chrissy Hines? I'm back on the chain gang. So your family, you don't get to pick. Like we always say that, in moments of anger, and we've all heard it in a script. You can pick your friends. You can't pick your family. You can pick your gang, but you can't pick your family. But oddly enough, your family has more sway and pull over your life, over your behaviors, over the way you choose to live than your gang. And even the way you choose your gang and the people you hang out with is a direct result of what's familiar to you. I guarantee you that there are a lot of qualities within your circle of friends that are similar to your family. They blend in. Your mom and dad like your friend Chuck because your friend Chuck is one of the family. Now I'm saying these things because over the last few weeks, I've been really trying to think about behaviors. Now, I'm going to throw one of my theories on you now. And that is the theory that every family has a runner. And some of you guys have heard this stuff before, but it bears repeating, because with what's going on in the world, big picture, the United States, smaller. Your neighborhood, smaller. Your house, smaller. It's like Google Earth. You start out small and then you expand. I always tell people, to me, talking about specific political situations, small. You know, it's small. I look at things very big picture. So I want to talk about runners. Every family, this is one of my theories, every family has what I call the runner. That's the person in their family that isn't necessarily the best looking or the smartest or the most charming even. They are the bravest. They are the most curious. They are the one that want to go further and farther. Now, years ago when I started my podcast, I actually had a podcast, and I looked back over all of those titles called In the Further, because I had a delightful friend named Lily who was Chinese from China. Completely English was her second language, and many times it was obvious. She was delightful. And rather than say, in the future we'll go for lunch, she would say, in the further. And I loved it. It was delightful. And I actually looked up the difference between further and farther. And further is energetic. It's a little bit further, but it's not measurable. Further down the road. It's not 2 kilometers. I don't know why I threw out kilometers. I'm not very good at the metric system. But let's just say 1.5 miles. So I think a kilometer is 2.2 miles. It's not important. I know when you're in Europe, they call it clicks. We got to go a couple of clicks. That makes me feel very worldly that I knew that. So and producer Stanton's posting little graphics, which is his polite way of saying, remind them to tap like. Evidently just saying you like it or leaving a comment. You've got to tap like. You've got to tap that thing. So back to the runner, okay? So further is energetic. It's metaphysical sometimes. It's a feeling. It's not measurable. It's further. It's down a piece. We're going that way. Follow me to the promised land. Farther is measurable. It's 2 miles farther down the road. Bam, bam, bam. Now we know. So when I talk about the runner wants to go further and farther. They're curious. They want to go where no one in their family. They tend to be more curious, more creative. They live further down the road, meaning if your family lives in their town, they've never left, they live in the same neighborhood. Runners tend to move. Runners tend to live far from their families. Runners are always, wanting to experience, see, grow. They generally are entrepreneurial. They make more money than the rest of their family. Even if they have a traditional job, they have a side hustle. They have something that makes them happy, a hobby. So I'm saying this because I'm going to venture a guess. I say that runners attract runners. That a lot of you that join me at 3:30 and join me on Saturday night are the runners of your family. And I'm saying this because I'm going to tell you these are all the good sides of being a runner. Being a runner means that even though you were pressed in that hot wax, even though you're a sexy, waxy camel or a beautiful, slippery dolphin, you still have imprints on you of your original gang, of the famga, of your family, of the neighborhood, of your culture, whether you're Latino, African American, Irish, whatever you are, because nobody's just total white bread American. I've met lots and lots of people that were regular several generation American. I have a friend who's Irish, and his 3 generations were born in this country, 4. And yet the family always talked about going to Ireland, taking a trip to Ireland. And they did, and it was a very big deal. They were very excited about it. And they went to Ireland and Scotland, but something about visiting the motherland, they talked a lot about it when they got back. So whatever you are, there's traces of the melting pot. There's traces of your culture. And one of the things about being a runner is that even if you were born in the United States, the parents that were born in the United States, there's always that weird conundrum that runners grow up in where the family is like, good for Chuck, he went to America. And who the hell does Chuck think he is that he's too good to stay here with us? And that's not just about the old country. Some of you are first generation. That's about if you grew up in Kentucky and you moved to Northern California, or you grew up in Minneapolis, and it means you grew beyond the compound, the confines, where you started, where they started, where you were pressed, where you were molded, maybe where you got a little dent. So I want you to think about whether you're the runner of your family. I'm going to bet that you are. I'm going to bet that most of you are the runners of your family, and that you've lived in that weird go away closer, like your family talks smack about you, but the minute you show up at the holidays, you're the life of the party. They love you. They admire you. But there's a little frisson, there's a little friction, there's a little something there, because you have the audacity to want more and to continue to want more, even if it's just in a dream and you're not getting it. So I want you to think about that. I'm going to pepper this with some stories. So the first story that kind of got me, that I wanted to share with you, and it's a weird story, but that's how I'm rolling these days. Here's the headline: 194-year-old apple tree. Just let that sink in. The matriarch of the Northwest apple industry has died. I didn't know they could tell exactly when a tree dies. This was all new to me. This story was fascinating. So in the Pacific Northwest, right, there's the old apple tree. It's referred to as the old apple tree. That's it. In Vancouver, Washington, was planted in 1826 when fur traders of the Hudson Bay Company settled in the area. It was considered the matriarch of the bustling apple industry. Now, to be clear, the apples were not sweet. They were green, but they were great for baking. So around 2015, the team of experts caring for the tree, there's a team of experts caring for this 194-year-old tree, noticed that the cambium layer, the growing part of the trunk, was starting to die back. Again, I know that trees die, but I didn't know they had like a life cycle. Like I've seen the redwoods in the Northwest. I've seen those giant sequoias that they say are crazy old. And I was very taken, it caused me pain when I read all the news stories after the fire of Notre Dame, where they said that there's no primeval forests left in Europe where they could find timbers big enough to recreate the roof of Notre Dame, because I've been there and they were single planks, some of them. Now think about it. Forests had grown for, millennia, and then civilization started, and 1,200 years back, 800, it took a long time to build Notre Dame. I want to say it was 800 years old. Call me a liar for a couple hundred years. But the upshot is that they had all of this untouched, since the beginning of time, forest gone. It's just, as human beings, we have marched across every continent. Like they might find trees like that somewhere on the planet, but not in the forests of Europe. So I didn't know that you could tell when a tree's ill, and a tree's like, oh yeah, the old tree it's about to go branches up. I say tits up, but well, the branch, I don't know, trunk up. Okay. So that created a spiral crack in the trunk. The tree finally died this June. Like from 2015 until now, 5 years they've been tracking the death of this tree. And the tree, as they say, had taken on a persona. It was a living organism. It was like a person. And since 1984, this is what struck me today. Since 1984, there was a public park built specifically around this one tree. Like they have the history of this tree down to the fact that it was given, that the seeds were given to a particular person after a meal. In Europe, he put them in his pocket. He came over here. He was the runner. He went across the continent. He gave the seeds that were in his pocket, which by now were wrapped in twine or something because they didn't have Ziplocs 194 years, to someone else. Legend has it that the old tree came to Vancouver as a seed transported by a British naval officer. They know the name of the guy. Royal Navy Lieutenant Emilius Simpson. Who knows? He might be related to Jessica. So, not likely. She couldn't figure out, anyway, tuna or chicken. This guy knew how to plant apple seeds. So, through time, and they have pictures of it, every year since 1984, they have had a festival, a birthday party for the tree. And people go. And they clip the tree, and they give people every year since 1984, about 200 people walk away with plantable clippings of this tree. And in fact, they call them root suckers, that as the tree is dying, other little trees little saplings start to pop out of the dying roots. So it'll be replaced there. Scientists were able to establish that the old apple tree is almost certainly a grandchild of the French Rainette, a 500-year-old variety dubbed the grandmother of all apple cultivars, meaning this was planned. These were apples that 500 years ago, people were figuring out this kind of apple tastes better than that kind of apple. Let's put these two together. And so they're asking people, there's a project that if you potentially have a piece of this tree, that you were at the tree's birthday party, that you contact these people, the Apple Genome Project, and, you can be a part of reviving the tree around the tree. They've got a tree in the middle. Now, why did I bring this up? Because of the old, if these walls could talk. Now, imagine how these seeds traveled. Imagine if the seeds could hear the people talking about what was going on. Imagine if you're at a fancy dinner, you're a naval lieutenant, you're a young man, and a beautiful woman flirts with you and talks to you and wants you to remember her in some way and hand you apple seeds, and you put them in your pocket. And then they go somewhere else because you're thinking of that girl. So they're wrapped, like I say, in a little piece of linen and twine, or maybe a napkin from that very meal, so that you can really remember the equivalent of the lipstick mark. Instead of the lipstick mark 194 years ago, it was a napkin with, seeds, and the seeds, and they're handed to this guy, and then this other guy plants them. And then they're tended to, where they say they believe that the tree originally sat in the front yard, because it's not within the confines of the original fort of the Hudson Bay fur traders. It's actually about 20 yards away from the original orchard that was originally planted in the great Northwest, as we know is apple country. And think about what those seeds, and I'm using the example of seeds because they're seeds. They're not a tree yet, but there's a tree in them. There's a thought in them. There's a whole world, 194-year-old world of tree. Think of everything that one tree saw from the moment it came out of the apple at that dinner until it died last summer. And this year, there wouldn't have been a birthday party. There would have been a funeral. But as we know, because of COVID, you can't even have a funeral for people. So you can't have a memorial service for a tree because you can't even have them for people. So it was canceled. The whole event, it takes place in October, was canceled because of COVID. And I started thinking about journeys and how we have traveled since March. We, the runners, we, the 3:30 gang, we, the Saturday night, whatever we want to call ourselves. And I thought about each one of us has seeds. Each one of us has this invisible something in our pockets. Now, in most people's cases, now it's your phone. It could record your life. People stop. They literally call it on Facebook, on Insta, your story. You added something to your story. I got to be honest with you. I'm not good at my story in that way. I post pictures. I don't even post videos on Insta. I do this with you guys and I do my Facebook Live, but I have friends that are constantly posting their story and they put, type on it and captions and, all kinds of and that's great. But I'm busy living my story. I will get better at these things, but I'm very busy trying to figure out what's inside of the invisible part of me, of that kernel, as I'm sure some of you are as well, because you're curious people, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't watch this. This isn't filled with zip dang. My dad used to call like blingy, exciting Disneyland, like all of that stuff. He referred to it as zip dang, the zip dang factor. He would say, yeah, I know you don't want to go to the museum. There's not enough zip dang. I love museums, but my brothers, when we went on family trips, would be like, ugh, another museum. Ugh. So we'd have to balance like intellectual and ephemeral pursuits with zip dang. And when I'm not on stage being hilarious, I'm not very zip dang. I mean, I dressed up for you, but it's not like I'm sitting here in a thong. In the world we live in, I don't even know why they call it Instagram. They should just call it Astagram. Pretty much you scroll through there and it's just butt cheek, half a butt cheek. It's like that's, and we keep upping the ante. People, they think they've got to curse more, or they've got to show more skin, or they've got to be more shocking, more salacious, which brings us to another story. We'll get back to the seeds. But I was reading stories because I went down a wormhole of how many people, and this is terrible, it makes me a bad person, and I'm okay with that. Here's the headline. Again, the Pacific Northwest must have been on my mind. Salem, Oregon. Well, that other story was Vancouver, Washington, so we're coming down the coast. An Oregon man died Sunday. I start thinking about you guys like the day after the show. I'm already thinking about what we're going to talk about the next week. Salem, Oregon. An Oregon man died Sunday after plunging 100 feet into the ocean during a hike at a state park on the Oregon coast. Now, they called medics. The troopers responded to Oswald West State Park. But investigators say that Stephen Gastelum, 43 years old, of Seaside, and a second person walked down. Okay, if you're walking down a trail called the Devil's Cauldron, first of all, who calls a trail the Devil's Cauldron? There's no need for that. Just call it like super windy trail. You got to be careful. Anyway, so two people, they didn't say who the other person was. Maybe they were traumatized. I always wonder, because if they're over 18, they say a second person, was it like they weren't supposed to be there together? Was Stephen, like to have a lady friend and he went down to the Devil's Cauldron with another person that he shouldn't have been with? Anyway, so he climbed to pose for a picture and a limb broke and he fell to his death. Now, we've all heard of death by selfie. In fact, right under that is a headline, man dies while posting for a photo at Machu Picchu. And in that story, which I took the time to read, he actually went over to a restricted area. In this case, this poor bastard, he just had a limb break. But wouldn't you know, looking at a limb, like maybe I shouldn't stand on a limb that juts out over the Devil's Cauldron? Maybe. But how much do people want likes and attention? What happens to people from the time they come out of that hot wax mold now, at this point in our history? Like, I was alive for many, many years before social media became a thing. And maybe that's why it doesn't define me. I see my nieces who were born during social media. One is 16, one is almost 19. They're going to be 17 and 19 like this in a couple months. And I think they're the opposite, in that the 19-year-old is all about, am I being, is my story, do people like, and she's got a lot of followers. And I'm thinking, how do you have followers? Like, your high school is only this big, and your circle of friends is this big. Okay? So it begs the question, if you're not a celebrity, if you're not on the Disney Channel, if you're not a content creator of the highest level, you're a pretty 18 and 3/4-year-old girl. Who are all these people that are liking your stuff? And why are you encouraging it? See, these are the things I think about, because I actually am a content provider. I'm on HBO right now. And I wonder what draws people to me. I ask. When people say, I just found you, love your work, blah, 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 I answer. A lot of you know this personally. I not only respond to comments, when I get private messages, I ask people, where did you see my work? What did you like about it? What prompted you to follow me? I'm curious, because I understand, and this is something I've talked about on the 330, and it bears, again, repeating, because I'm going to tie this all together, believe it or not. I am. I got plenty of time. We're a little over the half-hour mark. Is that, number one, love, likes, attention are a responsibility. To whom much is given, much is expected. That's biblical. So I'm always curious to know, when people want likes, you want a lot of people to like you. Why? What's that going to do? Why is that important to you? What's going to happen to you different from what's happening to you right now when a lot of people like you? Because I can tell you from my line of work, when people like me, well, then I get into the algorithm, and I get found, and I get booked. People see my work and say, I'm a booker. I book corporate gigs, or I have a private party, or it's my husband's 50th, or, it's good advertising for what I do. So it's nice to be seen, recognized, approached, given opportunities. But for the other thousands and thousands of people who never contact me, who just watch the video and laugh, or just saw the special and laugh, even then, because I understand currency, and we've had these conversations, but I understand that if there's a connection, if there's currency, if somebody's paying attention to me, and I say these things because I can only imagine what it's like if you're Eminem, or I say Eminem because I happen to love Eminem, but it could be Oprah. Again, I love Oprah, but I'm a little neutral on her. She doesn't excite me anymore. She hasn't done anything that excites me. There's people that I follow that excite me, that I'm like, they're still changing it up. I haven't been up on Eminem's game lately, but a few years ago, he came out with a song that's in the Guinness Book of World Records called Rap God, where it's the most words in a song. I saw him do it live. I saw him do it at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena on the Monster Tour. Most rappers in person are not good, because the reason why they're good is because they're in a studio and they can do it over and over and over and over, because rapping is hard. I talk pretty fast, and I stumble over my words and get lipstick on my teeth. I can't imagine what it would be like to rap at the speed and acuity that he raps in the song Rap God. It's exciting to me. I love to see artistry. I love to see people at the top of their game. I love seeing athleticism. I love the Olympics, except the last ones were a little bizarre. When you have a couch, let's just say Rio wasn't our best moment as a civilization having Olympics. But I digress. What I'm saying is that if you're a big, important person, if you're that, an A-lister, whatever, whoever you love within your own world, maybe you're a big fan. Some people are a big fan of the DC or Stan Lee or whatever it is, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, whatever it is. What Elon Musk? I know that's going to get this from producer. Yeah, there it is. Producer Stanton gave me he loves Elon Musk. What does that person? What does it feel like to have legions of invisible people you're never going to meet giving you their time and their attention and their currency, their energy? They have decided to share something with you. It is my belief, my personal belief, again, like now the new thing in my humble opinion, which isn't humble at all usually. This is truly my belief, is that if you are attracting people, if you are asking for something from them, energy, currency, attention, likes, thumbs up, whatever, that it has to be an equal exchange. What's in it for them? Why? Why do you want all that like? What are you gonna do with all that like? What are you gonna do with all those humps? and it was an old Fergie song about all that junk inside your trunk. Anyway, now I'm thinking about that stupid song. Me personally, I have grown everything I've done very, very, very slowly, like that apple tree. So slow, really, to the annoyance of everyone who's tried to work with me, including producer Stanton, because I honor that responsibility. I honor that exchange. That if you're coming to me, we went from nothing or very little to 4,000 in less than 6 months because of COVID. And then once we hit 4,000, we're almost at 200 additional subscribers in just the last couple of weeks. So I've been around long enough to know that when people like what you're doing, it grows. And it doesn't grow linear. It grows exponentially. Because the more people are liking you and telling their friends, the number grows faster. I've seen it. I've seen it with all of my work. But interestingly enough, within me, within you, are seeds that are still like that 194-year-old tree. And none of us have started dying or have cracks in our bark. We're all good. And as we continue to grow and expand through this COVID experience, think about what that tree has seen. 194 years. That tree has seen, the end of the Civil War, Declaration, like all of that. We were America. But it saw the expansion. It saw the Civil War, the Spanish-American War. It saw the first pandemic 100 years ago. By the time the first pandemic happened, the tree was already older than Betty White. The tree was already like, are you kidding me? I'm 94. I've seen everything. You see that orchard? Those are my kids. Think about what you have seen. Think about what you have weathered. Think about what you have run towards. Think about what excites you. And I say that because if we're honest with each other, and why would we be anything but, the 6 months passed. It was going to pass whether we were miserable, whether we were happy, whether we were creative, whether we were curious. Time is neutral. It was just passing. What we do with those seeds, what we do with that story, what we do with the transitions, how we grow, that's always, to me, the incredible curiosity. And I see how some people in these moments of introspection, without that, that ability to get real human contact, have been even more bananas about trying to capture just the right picture or get the most amount of likes. I'm watching the ante go higher and higher on social media, and especially in the political realm. By the way, I said it today on my 3:30. I am not a political person. I am a patriotic person, and I have a lot of. I mean, I'm just going to lay it out there because I have no reason not to. I have stopped communicating with a couple of people. I'm not mad, but I'm not responding because of the level of schadenfreude of how much they're loving that the president of our country is potentially ill and was airlifted to Walter Reed Hospital today. Like, it's not, again, not political. Don't care who anybody votes for, as long as you vote your conscience. But it's, I mean, do people understand how bad juju it is? Like, unless you're literally Ivana Trump, if you're his ex-wife and you want to have schadenfreude or some joy, or even Melania saying, yeah, you're going to survive this, but that's your payback for hooking up with that, I forget her name, but, you know, Stormy Daniels or whatever he did, or grabbing people by the hoo-ha. If he, in fact, did that, I wasn't there. He never grabbed my hoo-ha. But the point is that unless you know somebody, I'm using this as an exaggerated example, unless you know somebody, and even then, do you really want that juju? It makes me sad to see how inflammatory people on social media are getting just to get attention. Just to say, look at my witty little comment. Look at how clever I am. Look at my little sarcastic, mean-spirited self. Oh, I'm not going to be sarcastic. I'm going to be more sardonic. Whatever it is. Really? Is that necessary? Is that your best you? So here's how sensitive and bizarro people have gotten. Here's a story that came, what day did I pull this down? Tuesday. A Chinese teacher has been sentenced to death. They said that she would either be, let me see what she's going to get. They haven't decided yet. That she might get firing squad or lethal injection. They're still deciding. Okay, so listen to this. A Chinese teacher has been sentenced to death after a court found that she poisoned more than 24 kindergartners with nitrate. Okay? She poisoned them, killing one. Thank goodness. All but 2 of the kids that she poisoned got very, very ill. I'm curious to know what those 2 that didn't get ill, what are those kids made of? Or did they just not eat very much? Maybe they're just skinny. If it were me, I would have eaten mine and theirs. I would have probably been really, really sick, if not dead. When I was in kindergarten, I was quite the chow hound. And I'm not going to lie, I did taste paste. I didn't actually eat it, but I did taste paste. So she poisoned 24 kindergartens, killing one, to wage revenge on a coworker. Okay? Had nothing to do with the children. To spite another coworker that she had disagreements over student management issues. So for all I know, because it doesn't say in the story, I read it several times, she poisoned these kids out of revenge. So she may have poisoned the other coworker's class to make her look bad. But they caught her because the idiot had already been sort of suspect in the nitrate poisoning of her husband, who didn't die, just got super sick. Wayne reportedly has a history of trying to poison people's food. According to the BBC, she once tried to poison her husband with nitrate, but he suffered only minor injuries. I'm here to tell you that if you're with somebody and they poison you, get a divorce. Like, that was just a dress rehearsal. They're going to get it right next time. So they called her despicable and vicious, and she's either going to get shot, firing squad, or lethal injection. What kind of a world do we live in that people's egos are so fragile? This is 2 women that weren't even like in a fisticuffs, or just because they criticized her. That, like, how fragile are you that someone criticizes you and you poison 24 school children, killing one? That really stuck in my mind. There's three more stories, because again, you wonder like why you're drawn to certain things. What I'm drawn to is how, to me, I wonder, and this is a question, it's not rhetorical. I would love to hear from you guys. Does it seem like people are more touchy, more sensitive, more fragile, especially the younger generation? They can't take criticism. They can't handle if somebody says, hey, this isn't cool. That immediately throws them into a tiz, and they have to vape or be on anti-anxiety, medical marijuana. I don't understand. Thank you. I just got a yes, ma'am. I don't know what you know about Latinos and Latinos in the 70s, but basically criticism and mockery and lowering your self-esteem is, that's how they raise you. Like, it's a gauntlet. To get to the other side with a shred of dignity means I win. All right. I'm not going to do these stories in any particular order, but this was interesting, getting back to Ireland, as I was talking about before, going back to that imprint. Okay, I have a terrible sweet tooth. Terrible, the worst. Now, I don't give into it. I'm not arguing, and defending my liabilities. I'm not saying, well, I come from a family, but I do. Everybody in my family is chunkster. My two brothers were thin, but they're chunksters now too. They hit a certain age, and that was that. And my brother, he goes to Costco. I'm going to tell you right now, Costco, that's the devil's cauldron right there. Nobody needs a 5-pound lasagna. Unless you're Catholic and you have 8 children, nobody needs a 5-pound lasagna. Nobody needs, I'm not even kidding. There's a tray of muffins this big. Nobody needs 12 bran muffins that are 500 calories apiece. Nobody needs that amount of food. I'm sorry. If you're a Costco lover, reevaluate, how many people. First of all, if you shop at Costco and you're overweight, do the math. Just that's the answer. It's like, I can't lose weight because you're eating for a football team if you're shopping at Costco. So my brother recently discovered he had never shopped at Costco. He's 50. He made it to 50. He almost had like a clean getaway. And then during COVID, he went to find toilet paper because someone said there was toilet paper at the Costco. And ever since then, I don't even want to go on. My family doesn't watch these things. They're over me completely. I'm the runner. They have no use for me until I show up. All right. So I have a terrible sweet tooth. So does everybody in my family. And the Court of Ireland declared that Subway bread isn't bread. I mean, as soon as I read that, I was like, what is it? How can it not be bread? It's not like the Impossible Burger. What is it? Because I love Subway. When I was a road comic, when I was a broke-ass road comic, I ate a lot of Subway. I thought it was pretty healthy. I would get the tuna sub. I would get the veggie sub. I wouldn't get the cheese. I was very careful. I loved Subway. Oh, guess what? I was overweight by about 25 pounds. That's okay. I didn't shop at Costco. But I loved Subway. In fact, I was so broke and I ate so much Subway that I would save the little cards with the stickers, because that was like cash to me, that I knew that on a day that I had no money, I had a sandwich. There was a Sammy in my future. Ireland's Supreme Court has ruled that bread sold by the fast food chain Subway contains so much sugar that it cannot be legally defined as bread. So what is it? It's like cake? You're getting a tuna sub on a piece of cake? The ruling came in a tax dispute brought by Bookfinders Limited, an Irish Subway franchisee, which argued that some of its takeaway products, including teas, coffees, and heated sandwiches, were not liable for value-added tax, meaning they're considered staples. You don't pay tax on food. And Ireland said, no, this is not a staple. The panel of judges rejected the appeal Tuesday, ruling that the bread sold by Subway contains too much sugar to be categorized as a staple food. There is no dispute that the bread supplied by Subway in its heated sandwiches has a sugar content. Are you ready for this? This is the heated bread. 10% of the sugar, the weight of the flour included in the dough, and thus exceeds 2%. It's 8% higher in sugar than something that's considered a staple and called bread. Now, I thought about this because it goes back to my inculcation. It goes back to my famga. It goes back to my seeds. I was pressed into a family of people that are emotional eaters, that have triggers, that when something upsets them, I don't come from drinkers. I understand a lot of people come from drinkers. And I guess I should be grateful and go, well, at least nobody ever ate 2 muffins and crashed their car. We have those people further out in the family. But in my immediate family, you can tell. This is terrible. I can literally tell if something big has happened in the family. If I go to my mom's house and everybody's in the kitchen, I'm like, who's sick? Who's in the hospital? Who died? Like, everybody's just like spooning ice cream, like, oh no, Aunt so-and-so died. So, you know, I've been thinking about these things because that little seed, that little apple seed, it knew that it was going to be a green apple, but it didn't know it was going to live 194 years. It didn't know that it was going to have a park built around it. It didn't know that its clippings, 200 a year, were going to go to people that enthusiastically wanted to like it. That tree got more thumbs up than most people I know. People actually visited the tree in person. They took the time. They were excited about the clippings. They didn't just go online. Which brings me to this story. See how this week it's kind of a mix. Because I know sometimes I just tell stories and I brush over the current events. Don't forget to tap that you like this, and don't forget to join me Facebook Live at 3:30. And pretty soon Professor Stanton and I are going to talk about how to connect the 3:30 Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, because some of you aren't on Facebook, or some of you are in other countries, or whatever. We'll figure it out. Okay, so this is a story from NPR. Holocaust historian offers to serve 10-year sentence of Nigerian boy. All right, so I'm looking at this guy. He's got the big beard going. He's the man, right? His name is Peter, but it's spelled P-I-O-T-R. So it's Pieter Sawinski. We live in times when it seems that it is enough to click, retweet, or like something to do good. No, I don't agree with you. But I do agree with him, because he's saying it is not enough to just like it, repost it, move it on down the line, expose more people to it. He was distressed to learn, Peter Sawinski, who is the director of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. Okay, that's all right. This guy's a Holocaust historian. You can only imagine what he has seen in his work. What were his seeds? Who pressed him into being? That he said, this is my job, is to maintain this information. It's important. History is important. And it is, as a learning tool, incredibly important. Not to hamper you, not to slow you down, not to bring you shame, but to grow you and inform you. He was distressed to learn that a 13-year-old Nigerian boy, Omar Farouk, had been sentenced by Sharia law to 10 years in prison. 10 years. He's 13. After reportedly using blasphemous language about Allah in a private argument with a friend. Now, Omar Farouk's lawyer told CNN the punishment goes against the Nigerian Constitution and the African Charter for the Rights and Welfare of a Child. However, Peter Sawinski, who is, as I told you, the director of the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial and Museum in Poland, a living memorial that speaks to the 1.1 million people murdered at Auschwitz from that part of the world, from Poland. Most were because of religion, most for their religion. When he heard a young boy was in prison for a supposed blasphemy, he recalled that the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, had visited Auschwitz in 2018 and seemed moved. So he didn't write a tweet. He didn't have a stern op-ed. No, he wrote a letter to this guy asking that the young man be pardoned. And then he said, if it turns out that the words of this child absolutely require 120 months of imprisonment, and even you are not able to change that. I like the way he did that. He kind of manipulated him, like, are you the big boss applesauce or aren't you? But even if you can't, you're not able to change that. I suggest that in place of the child, 120 adult volunteers, excuse me, 120 adult volunteers from all over the world, myself personally included, serve a month in a Nigerian prison. We asked Sanowski, where do you find 120 people who offer to go to prison in Nigeria? And he told us there are already more than that. As soon as he put up this op-ed piece asking, he wrote the Nigerian president in a place where everyone could see it. He said that there were already 120 people that had said, I'll do a month for this kid. I'll do it. Of course, the effort might wind up being mostly symbolic, but shining light on the case of one 13-year-old boy and getting 120 or more people to offer to bear his punishment may make many feel at least a small responsibility for the boy's fate and future. Perhaps not every child who is in danger from brutality, hunger, or disease can be saved at once, but Omar Farouk can be helped right now, and people can go on to help others, child by child, person by person. See, this guy stood up and said, I'm one guy. I'm not going to tweet. I'm not going to pass this story on. I'm going to make something actually for real happen. I don't believe in something like the conscience of the world, Sanowski told us. There are over 7 billion consciences in the world. We must reach real human beings, not some mythical sum to do some good. So now's where I stick the landing. Every single one of you has seeds in you. Was passed from a delightful dinner where somebody ate fresh fruit, because that's what people used to do. They didn't eat sheet cake from Costco. And that seed came over on a ship, went across from the Hudson Bay fur traders. It ended up in the Great Northwest. It was planted. It lived 194 years. It started to die in 2015. There were tree doctor experts that could say, like, the tree's going down, and monitor the situation to create a future life. More trees, better trees. We all have an opportunity, even within what's going on now. Every single one of you has been pressed, yes. You have had people put pressure on you to be a certain way. You came through a cosmic opening into a particular place and time where you received certain promptings from your famga to be a certain way. But every single person has the potential to be a runner. Some of us are just organically runners, but everybody has the opportunity to be the runner, to tell an interesting tale, to engage people, to make them like you organically, not because you're doing something shocking or outrageous. I guarantee you, when he first reached out to the president of Nigeria, he didn't expect that some chick in California was going to read his story. 7 million consciences, not a mass collective. We are individuals. You're an individual. I'm an individual. And yes, there are pressures to bear to be a particular way. And we may be part of a group, part of a culture, part of a collective, a particular way of eating, behaving, speaking, language. But I hope that in the days and weeks to follow, whatever happens, we have an election in 4 weeks, big deal, whatever. However weird it continues to get, however we keep saying, like, now what? The now what is just an object of curiosity. How much does it really affect who you are, what you do, and what your story is as you go from place to place, growing, expanding, putting down roots, experiencing. I hope I had a good mix today. I hope I balanced, more of the personal and the news story. I'm trying because I want you to like me, but I feel the responsibility of giving you something you can like. So until next week, tap that thing and love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can as fast as you can.